Afternoon, everyone. I'm terribly sorry I'm not there with you in person or even by live video. Gerhard may have explained to you I am in China. I am the victim of a very frenetic schedule here and the Chinese habit of changing their minds and organizing things at the last minute. So I got caught by that unexpected arrangement of an event to which in China one simply does not say no. So I'll talk to you this way. I hope when I finish, you can have a good discussion amongst yourselves because I won't be there for the Q&A. I think you may find there's a lot to talk about. I hope you do. Okay, what I'm going to do this afternoon is outline a new spiritual vision that I've worked out for myself during the course of my life. Probably like most of you, I seem to have been born a naturally spiritual person and have always asked big questions all my life. And I'm going to share with you today where I've got to. The vision I'm going to outline comes from the insights and discoveries of quantum physics and the philosophy to be derived from it. It includes within it the work I have done on SQ, spiritual intelligence, which was all about finding meaning, value, and purpose in life. And I discovered quantum physics at the age of 15. It changed my whole life. I hope that I can bring some of my own excitement to you today. When my son was 5 years old, I was putting him to bed one night, and he looked up at me very earnestly and said, "Mommy, why do I have a life?" I was quite caught off guard to get a question like this from a 5-year-old, and I may have read more into his question than he meant by it. But after thinking for a little bit, I said, "Well, Ivan, you have a life so that by the end of your life in this world, you will have made some difference. You will have made the world a better place." He yawned and went to sleep, and I don't know what he made of that. But over the years, as all children do, he asked me many more questions. Does God exist? And is God a person? Where does our world come from? Why am I me and not someone else? What should I do when I grow up? Where will I go when I die? These questions children ask their parents. They're the big questions that have been asked eternally by human beings so far as we know human beings go back. They're the questions that all of our religions are designed to give us answers to. They're eternal questions. But I think that eternal questions need timely answers. We need answers today for children and adults who live in an age of the internet, technology, modern science. And I think that most of us want answers to these kind of questions that don't clash with our daily experience and the basic knowledge we have about how the universe does work. Personally, as a young child, I asked these questions, and I got my answers from my very devoutly religious grandparents who raised me till the age of 10. They were Christians, of course, and like a good Christian child, I believed in Jesus and God and the Bible and all the things that it said. But by about the age of 11, these Christian answers ceased to have meaning for me. I just lost my faith in them. One reason was that they promised that Jesus would protect those I love, and my beloved grandfather died. So I felt a bit betrayed by that. Another was that in Sunday school, the minister said, only people who know Jesus can go to heaven. I was 11 at the time, and I raised my hand and said, well, what about all those people in China who've never heard of Jesus? Can't they go to heaven? And the minister said very definitely, no, they can't. The only way to heaven is through Jesus. And I felt that was remarkably unfair. And I never returned to the Sunday school again, and very quickly, soon after, stopped wanting to go to the church at all. This left me quite lost for 2 or 3 years because my whole framework, my whole sense of meaning had come from the religious upbringing, and I'd lost faith in that, and I felt rudderless. My grades fell in school. I don't think I was very well behaved. I just was lost and rootless. And then in my early teens, I discovered quantum physics. And the wonderful things it revealed, that there's a whole strange new universe inside the atom, that this universe behaves in a way not like we've been told or expected anything but behaves. And I found the philosophy I derived from making sense of quantum physics, the ideas, the metaphors, the images from it, gave me answers as a young teenager to many of those big questions. 5 of those big questions that I want to address from you today are: where do I come from? Who am I? What should I do? Why am I here? What should I do? And what happens when I die? Is that really just the end? My children ask these questions. Now my grandchildren ask these questions. But not long ago, my 10-year-old grandson said to me, you know, Nana, I have all these questions, but at school, all they talk to us about is religion, and I don't believe in that. So I wish somebody would say something that makes some sense to me. And shortly after that, we all went to Nepal, and I gave a lecture to school children on these 5 questions. Where do I come from? Who am I? Why am I here? What should I do? What happens when I die? And my grandson was among the children listening. And afterward, he was quite excited. And he said, oh, Nana, you must write a book about that for children my age. That made sense. And for the next few days, he went round our hotel room saying, now, the thing that I like about quantum physics is. So I thought if it could spark an interest in my 10-year-old grandson, and the answers were good enough for me, they might say something to you today. So start with the first question: where do I come from? If I asked you how old you are, if I were there in person, I'd ask you to volunteer a few answers. I expect you'd give me answers like 18, 24, 35, 64, etc. True up to a point, but only up to a point, because each of us is actually 14.5 billion years old. That is the age of our own universe, as far as scientists can tell us. And the first thing that was created after the Big Bang was something called the quantum vacuum. The vacuum is the ground state of our universe. It's a still, unperturbed, therefore unseeable, unmeasurable field of energy, of potentiality, out of which everything has arisen. The vacuum contains all the possibilities that ever were, that are now, and ever will be. So I feel that you and I were there 14.5 billion years ago when the quantum vacuum was formed as possibilities that would one day be realized by the way the universe works itself out. So that's why I say we're all 14.5 billion years old. I hope that doesn't leave you feeling too decrepit today. It's an exciting idea, actually. It means you're very wise. Because it means that you were here when space and time and gravity were formed. You were here when the fiery clouds of gases were formed. You were here when those clouds of gases formed into stars, and when the stars formed into planets. And then some planets, ours at least, and I suspect others, developed life. And you and I carry the history of that within us. All of that, right back to the moment after the Big Bang when the vacuum was formed. Indeed, the quantum vacuum is inside every one of us. The vacuum is made of energy, and everything else is made of energy in the universe, quantum physics tells us. Matter, solid things that we believe in and think we can touch, is really just very concretized energy that's been so squeezed together that it feels solid. You and I are made of energy. We are patterns of dynamic energy, like whirlpools that you see in your bathroom sink at night when you brush your teeth. The matter that makes up our bodies flows into that pattern of dynamic energy that I am. And then some of it in a matter of seconds passes out again as I breathe. More of it passes out as I sweat and perspire during the day. More passes out as I eliminate during the day. And in 7 years, every 7 years, every single atom of this apparently solid me is no longer part of me. So you're brand new every 7 years. What persists, what is the basis of what you are, is that persisting pattern of dynamic energy. So that's who you are in terms of the universe. Come to evolution. Life on this planet, this body that we all occupy, this human nature that we claim belongs to us. Well, again, our bodies contain the whole history of evolution on this planet. The white blood cells in our bodies that mop up the toxins and help our immune system fight off disease, are really like the paramecia and amoebae that were the first creatures created as life began. The withdrawal reflex that we use when something is too hot is the earthworm inside us. The contractions of our gut is the jellyfish inside us. Our lower reptilian brain, as it suggests, is the snake within inside us. And that's where our instincts come from. The cerebral hemispheres, the primitive forebrain, are the rats and hamsters inside us. And that's where our emotions come from. Why we need some emotional intelligence so we don't all behave like rats. The cerebral hemispheres give us the heart of the lion and the aggression of the wolf. And the top, all but 2% of the top, is the chimpanzee inside us. And if you've ever seen about a program about the way chimps behave, you recognize a lot of our so-called human behavior. Totally, we share 98% of our genes with chimps and all the other life on this planet. That means 2% of us is human. So this so-called human nature we blame everything on is only 2% human. And I think that when it comes to the question, why am I here and what can I do? I'll jump ahead and just say we could maybe increase that to 2.5% or 3%. What a big change, because look at what 2% has done for us in terms of how different our culture is from chimp culture. We might actually, if we could just go another 0.5%, or gosh, be ambitious, a whole other percent, we might actually solve some of these problems that we've caused that we don't have the intelligence to solve. And that's something every one of us could work on, just to get maybe that extra 0.5% intelligent in our lives. So who am I? Well, that's a very big question, and we all ask it. I've asked it of my therapist many times because I remain quite confused about who I am. Quantum physics tells us that everything in the quantum realm is both particle-like and wave-like. So we are particle-like and wave-like. The particle aspect, which feels solid and definable, is our genetic inheritance. My reddish brown hair, my brown eyes, the basic structure of my face, though a lot of that has been formed by my experiences, but I'm still recognizable to an ancient aunt who hasn't seen me since I was 5 years old. My body shape, these things are my particle aspect. They don't change. Well, they change slowly as I grow older and in dialogue with my environment, but they're pretty steady. They're recognizable. The wave aspect is the aspect of me that reaches out and is entangled with everybody and everything else. Quantum physics says that everything is connected to everything. Everything is inside everything. It's with our wave aspect that we experience that, because waves, interweave and combine, whereas particles go like that. With my wave aspect, I am the world. I am you, you are me. I am my relationships. And because I have many different relationships, I'm many different me's. That's the thing that's always confused me in my life. I seem to be all these different people. And then I ask a therapist, well, who am I really? Well, I think the answer is I really am just a multitude. We are who we're with. We are where we are at. I can tell you a story about that from my own family that illustrates it. When my daughter was 9 years old, my husband and I went to parents' evening at her school. And the first teacher we saw was her Latin teacher. We said, how is Anna doing? He frowned and shook his head and said, oh dear, I don't want to upset you, Dr. and Mrs. Marshall, but I'm not very pleased with Anna. She's not very polite. Her workbooks are messy. She disturbs class discussions. Frankly, I don't quite know what to do with Anna. Well, we left that teacher pretty discouraged, thinking, what on earth are we going to say to our daughter when we get home? But then we went and saw her English teacher. And the English teacher said, oh, you're Anna's parents. I'm so pleased to meet you. I wish all my pupils were like Anna. She contributes so much to the classroom discussion. Her ideas are creative. We publish her poetry in the school magazine. She's a thoughtful member of the group and the class. Wonderful girl. Different teacher, different child. And if you think about it, your different relationships during the week or during a month, you'll realize you are different with different people. All of us as children are different with our parents. Even when we're adults, we don't quite adjust to treating our parents quite like other people. And then, so as children, we were different with our parents, we were different with our friends, we were different with our friends at home than we were at school. And it's gone on throughout life. This is why we find it nourishing to have different circles of friends, because it draws out these different sides of our being. So we're everything and everyone. And another thing about who we are is that we are the people who make the world. I'm important. Eckhart Tolle said something in his book, The Power of Now, right at the very beginning. He says, you must realize how important you are. You are critical to the evolution of the universe. And if you don't know quantum physics, you might think Eckhart Tolle is being nice and spiritual and expansive. But in fact, he's being spot on scientific. Because quantum physics tells us that it's when we observe something, when we measure something, when we do an experiment on something, that the one of the many sides of that underlying quantum reality manifests. So we see what we look for. We ask a question, we get the answer to the question that we ask. Quantum physics tells us that we and quantum potentiality are co-creators of reality. That's how important each of us is. You and I make the world. I call it being an agent of the quantum vacuum, because the quantum vacuum is all that potentiality. It is the vast sea of potentiality. And when we ask a question, we're dropping a bucket into that sea of potentiality and bringing up a bucket full of new reality. And we make the world and we make ourselves. No excuse for saying, I'm just a victim of this, I'm a victim of my circumstances, I'm a victim of my childhood. Yes, these things affect us and they give us challenges. But we all, through our dialogue with our experiences, our surroundings, our relationships, our learning, our moment by moment creating ourselves. I'm responsible for me, and I'm responsible for the world. That's how important you and I are. Why are we here? Well, quantum physics tells us that relationships make reality. It is actually in physics when this system comes together with that system and they meet and form a relationship that something new arises from it. It's called quantum emergence. There's a Hebrew myth that inspires me to tell you what I think you should do about this. According to the Kabbala, there was a world before our world. And that world was so full of light that finally the intensity of the light was too much for the vessel containing it. And the vessel shattered. And the sparks of light from that world scattered into our world. And the Jews believe that there is one of these divine sparks from this original perfect world in each human being. You have your divine spark, I have my divine spark. And this Jewish myth says that the purpose of life is to form loving relationships which will combine these divine sparks. And by combining enough divine sparks, we reconstitute that sacred vessel. We heal our shattered world. Quantum physics makes a lot of sense of this Hebrew myth. The so-called divine sparks are the quantum vacuum within each of us, the potentiality of the universe within each of us. We do have it. And when we make human relationships, we are gathering the fragments together of those bits of potentiality in me and in you and in you and in you, and bringing them together to constitute a larger whole. We're constituting humanity. We're healing in our fragmented world. So one thing we're here to do is to make good relationships. Physics tells us that. That's one purpose of our lives. Because we're the people who make the world, it comes to what I said to my son when he was 5 years old. We're here to make a difference. We're here to clean up the mess. We're here to be compassionate, to not judge, to not treat others as others, because quantum physics tells us there are no others. That's an illusion, because you are you, you are me, and I am you. I can't be a stranger to myself. There are no strangers in the world. We are all one. We are all one family. And we all carry that divine spark of the quantum vacuum within us. I go to Nepal very frequently, and in Nepal, they say namaste when they meet you. And I asked them, what does this namaste mean? And they said, it means I greet the God in you, the Buddha or the Atman, depending on whether they're Buddhist or Hindu. And it struck me how beautiful that is and what it would be if we, whenever we meet another person, said namaste or some equivalent, or at least experience the feeling. I greet the God in you. I greet the good in you. Because we all have all that potentiality. That's one reason we shouldn't judge. There isn't anything any one of us isn't capable of. I don't believe there are evil people. I believe there are people who do evil things, because evil is a potentiality amongst all our other potentialities. But I don't believe anyone is completely evil. I believe there's that good in everyone. And if we can see that good in another person, it's like holding up a mirror to them, helping them see it in themselves, and thus helping them realize it. I visited a maximum security prison a few years ago. I spent the morning with ordinary murderers. They were straightforward people. They had killed because they wanted more money, or they were angry with the wife or something, but there wasn't something you'd want to call evil about them. They were just bad guys who'd done some bad things. But I had to spend the afternoon with the sex offenders, with men who'd raped women and children, men who'd killed women and children. And I prejudged them before getting into the room, so that when I arrived at the door, we see what we expect to see. I saw monsters in the room. Their faces looked distorted to me. They looked evil. And I was terrified because I was the only woman. There were at least 50 of them, and there were 2 guards in there to protect me. But I spent 3 hours with these guys. They weren't terribly articulate. Many of them were very low intelligence and poor education. Most of their words were 4-letter vocabulary, F this and damn that and so on. But with their limited vocabulary, they told their stories. What had made them do what they had done, or what had been done to them as children. Many of the pedophiles had been victims of pedophiles as children. And then it gets into your system. You want sex with children, and you repeat it when you're an adult. Toward the end, they were saying how hard it is to be locked away from the world. And they said, everybody thinks we're monsters. We're not monsters, we're human beings. And because I'd spent 3 hours with them, I got to know them a bit. And I could resonate with what they were saying. Yes, they had done monstrous things. And my own daughter as a child had been hurt by one of those kind of men. So it was personal to me, what those men can do to lives. And yet I felt a spark of fellow feeling with them, fellow humanity. And toward the end, I was even able to give them a hug, sincerely. And some of them then asked me to take their diaries, because they said they had no one on the outside world to read them, and they wanted someone to know their stories. And I felt sad when I left them that these men are going to stay locked up, have to stay locked up for the sake of society, but that there's goodness in that room. And I think my doing that, my being able to hug them, gave them that moment of feeling, yes, I'm someone somebody can hug, somebody someone can love. And maybe help them to be just a little bit better inside. So that's something we can do. I'm getting to the question now of what can I do? You don't have to be Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela to make a difference. Every one of us can make a difference with the tiniest, smallest thing. Often I live alone and I'm very lonely. I go out on the street and not many English people even notice you on the pavement when you walk. I live in a tiny village and people walk past without looking at me. But occasionally someone says hello and smiles. It makes my day. That's a simple thing you can do. You can smile at somebody. You can make somebody's day with such a simple thing as noticing them, maybe saying hello and giving them a smile. They might be as lonely as I am, and they feel just for a moment they have a friend. You can be polite, you can be thoughtful, you can be helpful. Every one of us, almost every day, has some opportunity to be polite or rude, to be patient and not lose our temper, or to lose it. Every one of us has the opportunity probably to help someone every day. In Oxford, where I live, there are homeless people on the streets. I always give the first two money. Maybe I shouldn't, because they are probably going to buy drugs or drink with it. But then I think if drugs or drink are all they've got, let them have it. Then I can't give money to all the rest because I've lost all the change in my pockets. But I do stop and say a word to them. How are you doing? Why are you on the street? You can do things like that. And they often say to me, you know, you're the first person in the last 3 hours that stopped and talked to me. Most people just walk past me and don't look. So it means a lot to someone to look at them, to ask them how they are, chat to them just a minute. It doesn't take more than a minute of your time. To make the world a better place, I can make myself a better person. If the world is a mess, it's because I'm a mess. It's because you're a mess. All this anger we feel with each other, all this impatience we express, is putting bad vibes out into the universe. Literally, bad energy. We can put good energy out, making everything better. So just by holding your temper for the day, you can change the energy you contribute to the universe. I don't think we need God. I don't need God to know how to live a decent life and a meaningful life. I think that the way of the universe, what the Chinese call the Tao, is inside me. It is my way, in big ways and small ways. And my conscience tells me how to live in accord with that. My conscience tells me when I'm making a good relationship or a bad relationship, when I'm being impatient or patient, etc. And I think what we can do to make this world a better place, to make our lives better, to make our relationships better, is just make our daily life our daily prayer. Make the acts that you go through today, each day, the rituals of your prayer ceremony. Making a nice meal for the family. Making the table look nice when people sit down. Putting a flower somewhere. Lighting a candle. That tremendously powerful symbol that we all enjoy, bringing light into the world by lighting a candle. Make my life my prayer. And that's all the spirituality I feel any of us needs. There you've got your meaning, your purpose, your values, and you know how to make a difference. Now I've got 5 minutes left and we'll come to that last question. Is death the end? Is that just it? I think not. And I think not for 3 reasons. 2 of them quantum. 1 just plain genetic. If you happen to have children, your genes go on. indeed the reason I had children. At the age of 39, I had my first one. I never wanted children. I'd had an unhappy childhood. I didn't want a family. But at the age of 39, my genes started shrieking at me because I'm the only one with my mother and my father. Don't let us stop with you. Please let us continue. And I just felt this overwhelming compulsion to reproduce. So I had 2 children, and my genes go on in them. And I now have 5 grandsons, and my genes go on in them. And they will go on and on and on. So that's the genetic way that my death is not the end of me. The second one is more quantum, to do with the fact that we are our relationships and we are our experiences. When you're listening to this talk by me today, you're rewiring your brain just a little bit. What I'm saying is making an impression on the neural connections in your brain. In short, our meeting today is shaping your brain, which is a large part of what makes you you. You may forget this talk, you may forget me, but that change I made in your brain is going to go on, because I'm wired into you. If you remember me as well, then great, I survive in your memories. Now, that may not be good enough for us, because you say, yeah, well, what do I get out of that? There's another way that there is a kind of quantum immortality that the Nobel physicist Roger Penrose and I thought of independently, but we came up with exactly the same thing. And I'll share that with you. And it's a little more concrete about how you persist. I told you that each of us is like a whirlpool of energy, a pattern of dynamic energy. Scientists a few years ago did an experiment with a tank of superfluid helium. And a superfluid is the same kind of quantum structure as the quantum vacuum. Just to snow you, I'll tell you they're both called Bose-Einstein condensates. But the point is, when you make a whirlpool in a tank of superfluid helium, the whirlpool lasts forever. It is an eternal motion machine. Because in a Bose-Einstein condensate, like the vacuum, there is no noise, no interference, no static, nothing to tear apart a system. So a pattern made on it persists forever. You and I are patterns on the quantum vacuum. When we die, the atomic matter of our bodies decays, except for our skeletons, which seem to last forever. But it disappears. But the pattern that we are does not disappear. We are literally written into the universe. And the pattern that I am carries my potentialities. And when those potentialities, like all quantum potentialities, meet something in the environment that causes them to be realized, that potentiality of mine will come back into the world. So there's going to be another me, what the Hindus and Buddhists call reincarnation. I may not be a woman, I may be a man, I may not be English, I may, if I'm lucky, be Chinese, because I like China very much, like to spend a life here. My 10-year-old grandson at the time I told him this, said, please, Nana, at least let me be a boy. And I said, no, I can't even promise you that. You might be a girl. And he made a face. But you do go on. Your possibilities, which is essentially your quantum self, what you are in your most inner self, is eternal. And its possibilities get realized in new incarnate forms as the world unfolds. So we're all here to stay, except that I have to leave you now because my time is up. Like I said at the beginning, I hope you'll have a lively discussion about all this. I hope that you will continue to ask good questions. I've come to the point in life where I think asking questions is the answer, because every question brings up a bucket of meaning. So I'm going to leave you today with a little inspiration. My favorite poem, it's by Rilke, a good German. Love the questions. Rilke says, I beg you as much as I can to be faithful toward all that's unknown in your heart, and to learn to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms or like books written in a foreign language. Do not seek the answers, he says, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. So for now, live the questions. And perhaps one day you may live into the answers. So ask some good questions now. Keep the questions coming. Every question you ask brings up new meaning for you. That increases your SQ or spiritual intelligence. Sorry, I have only been with you in this rather incarnate form. Have the rest of your day good. Enjoy your conference. And hopefully I'll see you next time you get together, even in person. Bye-bye for now.